Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Urbana Corporation's 2020 Annual Shareholders Meeting. As a reminder, this is not a virtual shareholders meeting. We're providing this webcast of the meeting as a courtesy given the circumstances of COVID-19. Shareholders who are accessing this webcast online or by phone will not be able to vote or otherwise participate in this meeting. A recording of the webcast will be available on our website in a few days. I will now turn the meeting over to Thomas Caldwell, Chairman of Urbana's Board of Directors.
Well, thank you, Liz, and good morning. I'm Tom Caldwell, Chairman of the Board of Urbana Corporation. I'd like to welcome everyone who's attending out there in virtual land and thank the folks that have turned up in person. I'd like to acknowledge that under the circumstances this meeting taking place during COVID-19, my directors, but also like to thank those who voted by proxy in advance in order to reduce the physical contact during these times. The meeting will now come to order. I shall preside as chair of the meeting. I'll ask Harry Liu, the Secretary of the Corporation, to act as Secretary of the meeting, and Radha Mulchan Singh and Lon Grinton of AST Trust Company to act as scrutineers. The Secretary has confirmed that the meeting materials were mailed to shareholders in accordance with all applicable laws on May the 14th, 2020. I direct a copy of the declaration of mailing to be attached to the schedule of the minutes of this meeting. Prior to the meeting, the scrutineers reported on the common shares present and the number of proxies received for the common shares, and I call upon the Secretary of the meeting to read the preliminary scrutineers report.
I have read the scrutineers report on attendance, which states that there are a total of 29 shareholders present in person or represented by proxy, holding 6,124,000 common shares. This meets the quorum requirements of the corporation for the purposes of this meeting.
Thank you, Harry. I declare that with notice having been properly given and the requisite quorum of shareholders being present, the meeting is properly constituted for the transaction of business for each of the resolutions that follow. Only the shareholders of common shares are entitled to vote. All votes at this meeting will be taken by a show of hands. The scrutineers have advised me that sufficient proxies have been voted in favor of each of the matters to be voted on at today's meeting to approve such matters. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the shareholders' meeting held on May 9th, 2019. These minutes were available or are available for inspection by shareholders. Unless there's an objection, I do not propose to have the minutes read. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that the minutes of the shareholders' meeting held on May the 8th, 2019 be approved.
Thank you very much, Brendan Caldwell. Seconder? Mr. Harry Liu. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. I don't know why the left doesn't count, but at any rate. Contrary? Carried. Financial statements. The next item of business is to place before this meeting the financial statements of the corporation for the year ended December 31st, 2019. These financial statements, together with the report of the auditor dated March 11th, 2020, have been duly made available to all shareholders of the corporation. Are there any questions here with regard to the report of the financial statements? Fine, there being none. I will say to shareholders who are tuning in, we did ask for questions to be submitted prior to the meeting. We have not received any, but if you do have any questions or you feel a matter hasn't been properly addressed, please feel free to email me either at Urbana's email address, or you can email me personally, tomc@caldwellsecurities.com. That comes directly to my personal device. Or you can call me on my cell, 416-258-5082. We have always tried to be very responsive to shareholder concerns and questions. So clearly, if the mechanism hasn't worked to elicit the kind of answers that you would like, please feel free to contact me directly or a corporation. The next item, the election of directors. The next item of business is the election of directors. I declare the meeting open for nominations for the election of directors for the ensuing year or until their successors are elected or appointed. May I have a nominator?
I nominate Thomas S. Caldwell, Beth Ann Cawley, George D. Elliott, Michael B.C. Gundy, and Charles A.V. Pennick individually and not as a slate for election as directors of the corporation.
Thank you. Are there any further nominations? I declare the nominations closed. May I have a motion to elect those nominated as directors of the corporation?
I move that each of the persons who have been nominated be elected director of the corporation for the ensuing year or until his or her successor is elected or appointed.
Thank you very much. A seconder, please. Liz Nomofsky. Harry.
I'm just seconding.
Oh, Harry, Lou, excuse me. Sorry, Liz. All those in favor? Contrary, if any? Carried. I declare each of those nominated to have been elected as a director of the corporation for the ensuing year or until his or her successor has been elected or appointed. The next item of business is the appointment of the auditor for the current year. May I now have a motion to appoint Deloitte LLP as auditor of Urbana Corporation?
I move that Deloitte LLP be hereby appointed auditor of the corporation to hold office until the close of the next annual meeting of shareholders or until its successor is appointed at such remuneration as may be fixed by the directors, and the directors are authorized to fix such remuneration.
Thank you very much, Harry. A seconder, please?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Liz. All of those in favor? Contrary? The motion is carried. Is there any further business to be brought before this meeting? If there is no further business, I will entertain a motion to conclude this meeting. But before I have that motion, let me point out what we've typically done in our meetings is to get through the legal part that we have to deal with and then open it up to a little bit more discussion, which we plan to do when we terminate the formal portion of the meeting. So could I have a motion to terminate, please?
I move the meeting be terminated.
Thank you. Second?
I second the motion.
All in favor? Carried? Contrary? Forgot the contrary. Sorry. At any rate, now, Harry, I'll leave it to you to come up to make a further announcement, then I'll come back.
Now, this concludes the formal part of the meeting. In a few moments, Mr. Caldwell will come back and make a brief presentation about the corporation's operations. At this point, I'd like to draw your attention to our caution regarding forward-looking statements. Thank you. The following presentation may contain certain forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Ontario Securities Act. These forward-looking statements may involve known or unknown risks, uncertainties, and other factors which may cause the actual results or events to differ materially from those expressed, implied, or anticipated in such forward-looking statements. Unless required by applicable securities laws, Urbana does not assume any obligation to update these forward-looking statements.
Thank you, Harry. I plan to dwell on the past, actually. Let me do a quick review of 2019, which is, of course, the easy part. What was interesting about 2019 is what occurred in the last month of 2018. As you know, the market in December 2018 just absolutely fell off the edge of the earth. I was feeling quite smug and proud of myself that I had raised some cash and was in pretty good order for this decline, although you never have sold enough when you have a decline of that magnitude. So there we were. We did suffer in that decline, but not anywhere near as, in fact, we could have had we gone into that fully invested. So that worked out all right. But the interesting part was in January of 2019, the market just took off and went straight on up. And this challenge of being smart and being out of the market is you tend to become a little lead-footed. And so being a little bit lead-footed, we were not in the market as much as we could. So we were behind the curve in the early part of the year. We did catch up during the year and ended the year 2019 with, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but about approximately 25%, give or take, return on the year, which is, for us, acceptable. We followed through in the early part of the year and declared our dividend as well. Also in 2020, we reconstituted our normal course issuer bid, and we've been buying back stock and are continuing to do so even during this COVID period. And we see that as a feature. And part of that is that the mid-sized, smaller corporations in Canada have become orphans, because with the larger dealer firms, they see this as more of a junior company, and there's a lot of pressure within the bigger firms, bank-controlled firms, to stay with household names. So there's a whole array of mid-sized companies that have in fact become orphans. When that's the case, then it behooves management, I think, to step in and provide marketability. And we've been attempting to do that within the confines of rather constrained normal course issuer bid rules, but we are continuing to buy stock, and we bought $1 million plus over the year. That is, and our normal course issuer bid period goes from August to August, I believe, the end of August to the end of August. So that has been a feature. And that brings us into this year. We had quite a satisfactory 2019. We maintained a dividend. We had a fairly good operating year in several components. We had a significant recovery in one of our major holdings, which is Real Matters, and that did spectacularly. It had a spectacular decline a year or so prior, and then it had a very significant move onto the upside. We have sold a little bit of stock, probably sold a little bit of it too early, but it's been a big gainer for us as well. And we still have a position in that stock of approximately $40 million, which represents about 17% of our liquid portfolio. And we have sold a little bit of stock on the way, but it's a wonderful company that benefits from reduced interest rates as people refinance mortgages. They're also in the business of closing and settlement and title search within the United States, which is an absolute mess of an environment, and they are adding a coherence to that, as they have done in the appraisal business. The rest of the market has performed quite well for us, but we got smacked as everybody did. When this COVID thing hit in March, again, the market went off the edge of the earth. If I could give you our performance for this year to date, to May, that's the last numbers I have. Our portfolio year to date, that is from calendar year ending to May 30th, 31st, we were down 7.5%, which is significantly less than the markets in which we are involved, but it's still a decline. However, our performance since inception in October 2002 is still 13.6%. Our focus in our marketable portfolio has been financial services, primarily U.S., where we have some significant gains. And so if we sell any of those, we want to sell it against a loss to cut down our tax bite. We also added to them a little bit, the financial service. We started to buy some of the Canadian banks, bought some TD Bank. And we extended our risk profile a little bit by adding to our energy sector, Suncor, and a couple of other companies in that area. Because oil was down and out and nobody was driving, and supply and price arguments between the Saudis and the Russians. So we tend to look for what we see as crises and see the opportunities in crises. So if I had to give you a personality, financial services are a big component of our marketable portfolio. In our private equity component, we have some very interesting companies, and I was very happy to see Richard Carlton, who's the CEO of the Canadian Securities Exchange, come to the meeting at some personal risk to himself. So we very much appreciate Richard's being here. The Canadian Securities Exchange is it's a wonderful business and it's a great team, and the credit goes to Richard. He has built this thing. That this is a major contributor to Canadian economic growth, helping companies to access public capital. And that has been a big problem in this country for some period of time and for indeed many reasons. But those folks at the CSE have tried to simplify, ease the process. They're leading edge in thinking, progress, ideas. And I'll let Richard talk about that. And seeing he was here, I asked him if he would sing for his supper and just give us a few words. But we have approximately 11% of our portfolio in the Canadian Securities Exchange. Great team, great morale, great innovators, and a great contributor to our country. And I'm very, very proud to have an investment in that company. So, Richard, if you could come up and take the next hour and a half to discuss or a few minutes, whatever.
Thank you very much, Tom. It's always a pleasure to speak to the shareholders of Urbana Corporation who kept the faith with our organization some years back when you and your shareholders led a recapitalization of the company. And as I say, I'm very pleased and grateful for the support that we've received from you and the Urbana team over the years. And I'm glad to say that your faith, I believe, was not misplaced. We've done extremely well. And normally, when I am asked to speak at the Urbana AGM, I talk about last year's figures, how many billions of dollars that the companies listed on the exchange raised, and how much trading increased over the previous year. And all of those things were true in 2019 and obviously into this year. But I thought people might be interested in, how do you run a stock exchange with nobody in the office? We were on the leading edge, really, of the lockdown because so many of us attended the PDAC, the big mining conference in Toronto, the first week of March. And of course, a number of people who were there contracted the disease. And so I had booth duty along with the rest of many of our team members. And so we immediately went into self-isolation, at least a week to 10 days before the lockdown orders started. So we were a little bit ahead of the curve. And then when the lockdown orders came on, we instituted our disaster recovery plans. So we have rehearsed a little bit over the years, the scenario where we have everybody, the market operations analysts, the technology folks, the listings regulation team, the folks that are doing business development for trading, market information, and listings, all working from home. And our platform was robust enough to support conference calls that sometimes went on for 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And we actually saw in the Canadian markets generally record volumes of message traffic, order flow, and trading during the market break in March. Yet the analysts who were working from home, had home-style bandwidth, were able to provide real-time market oversight, support for the trading community, for our issuers who had questions. And we've since morphed into an extremely aggressive campaign, virtually, of course, to educate our issuers, to provide an awful lot of investor education opportunities, again, working with folks from our ecosystem and the community. And in fact, this afternoon, for those of you who are watching, if you go to the CSE website, thecsc.com, you'll see we're doing our most ambitious event yet, a full afternoon of content, material, interviews, information about investing in the new and burgeoning psychedelic space. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be the next cannabis, but there is a tremendous amount of retail investor and institutional investor interest in this space for pharmacology reasons, wellness, addiction treatment, and a number of other applications that have folks really, really interested in the space. So again, there's 6 or 7 hours of content that we're running this afternoon, and I encourage you to have a look. But those are the sorts of things that we've been doing to engage with our community. People ask me from time to time, well, when are you guys going to open back up? And the answer is, of course, we've been open throughout. This is what it looks like. This is how we're going to do things more and more in the future. And the engagement that we've received, whether it's the number of folks that are following us on Instagram or the subscribers we have to our YouTube television channel, and please help us out by subscribing to our YouTube television channel, because we're about this close from getting paid by YouTube. It'll be about $6 a week, but in any event, our content is drawing in enough viewership that we're starting to become a destination. So again, all of these things that we've been able to develop as a result of responding to the pandemic, it's been a learning experience for us, and we've had great support from our team. As Tom said, morale is really good amongst the team, and we're very, very pleased with where we are. And I guess last but not least, and I don't have the facts and figures to support it, but of course, our costs are down and our revenues are up with the trading patterns and listing patterns that we have seen over the last few months. So the company has never been in better condition from a business perspective either. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Richard, and I'm glad you came to the meeting so we could put you to work. It's interesting. Something that people may not recognize about the Canadian Securities Exchange. The cannabis industry in Canada would not exist had it not been for the Canadian Securities Exchange and the team there. Would not exist. And Urbana is proud to be a part of that. That combination, the CSE, and was able to facilitate the building of a multi-billion-dollar industry and billions of dollars of wealth and thousands of jobs. And that came solely because of the existence of the Canadian Securities Exchange. So we tend to forget that innovators are still out there. And again, we're glad to be part of that. So in the private areas, we have some significant promise in a couple of the companies we have. We've got a few that are going to be struggling for a little while, but that's the basis of private equity. The specifics, I don't know really what the concerns might be out there, the questions might be out there, but let me say this. We are always open, and we always try. Liz is in charge of public relations, and she's aware that I will get back to shareholders within a day, anytime they call me, sometimes a lot sooner than that. So if you have a question, if you have a concern, email me. I've given you my personal email, tomc@caldwellsecurities.com, or call me on my cell, 416-258-5082. And I'd like to thank you all for participating, and for those of you who've come down to share in the meeting. It's kind of an empty room with little spaces between us all here, but we are social distancing. But thank you for participating, and we look forward to working our way through a really interesting market that we're involved in. But as most of you are aware, I always describe myself as an incurable optimist, and my job is to look at crisis and see the opportunities that exist in that, see the value that exists in that. So thank you for participating. All the best to everybody out there. Thank you. Bye-bye.